Welcome to the Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. This podcast is designed to provide momentum in our God-given roles of leadership as we partner together to equip today's Christian leaders for tomorrow's opportunities. Whether you're a pastor, youth leader, ministry volunteer, parent, or student, we want to be your go-to and most trusted resource for equipping and encouragement when it comes to your ministry and leadership influence. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello and welcome back to a Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. Today we are talking with Donny Varney. Donny, welcome.
Hello, Eric. It's good to be back.
Donny is the vice president of Momentum and a good friend. It's been awesome getting to work with you, Donny, having our offices be right next door to each other. While I've been on staff the past 5 years at Momentum, you've been on staff for 10 years plus maybe at Grace Church as the sports pastor. And we lured you away. Donny, from being the sports pastor to work for Momentum. I've teased you several times that it was because you sat in your cubicle and I sat in mine talking about Momentum and casting vision to pastors and trying to sell them on Momentum Ministries. And you heard all of those conversations and decided, you know what? Grace Church doesn't need me as the sports pastor. I should go work for Momentum.
I heard so many different. I heard more sales pitches about that than anybody else, I think, combined. So you're right, Eric. It was your doing. It's your fault.
We all know the Lord had other plans. So yeah. Well, for that, I'm grateful that you are a part of the team. Ultimately, we're not competing. We're all a part of God's kingdom, and we know that. But Donny, it's awesome just as I've gotten to know you, even in the first 5 years of us just being members of Grace Church and my kids being a part of the sports ministry and seeing how you've built your teams. I bragged on you often. I will probably continue to brag on you that you are a team builder. You see potential in people that oftentimes other people don't. And it's even fun. There was a conversation even that you and I had recently where we were on a call with somebody and, the call ended and I think I texted you. I was like, why did you do that? And you're like, because I see potential in that person and I want to help draw that out. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, I wouldn't have ever thought of that. And so the more I've learned these things from you, you literally have in your brain, you have these 10 things that this list of R's, right? That you've kind of, you call it the road to replacement. Did I get that right?
You got it right.
R's, 10 R's, the road to replacement. So friends, you're in for a special treat here. If you're listening to this episode, hear me very carefully. Pull your car over, press pause if you're listening while you're driving. This is an episode that you're going to want to sit down with like a pad of paper and take some notes, because Donny's given me kind of his run through on this. And I'm like, this is a masterclass in replacing yourself, in building teams. This is an episode for you if you're looking to add volunteers to your ministry and equip them and unleash them. This is an episode that you're going to want to listen to if you're thinking succession planning. If you've heard like even the Craig Rochelle principle of like, if somebody can do something 75% as well as you, then you should let them do it. Donny's going to give you a framework here in these 10 things that you're going to want to be aware of and kind of have your head wrapped around. So Donny, I don't know if I'm doing this justice or not, but kind of walk us through how did you even come up with this, and how have you used it since?
Yeah, that's a really good opening question. And I appreciate all the things that you've said. I joke when I talk to people that most of the time, the reason that, I've found myself by God's grace surrounded by amazing people and teams and leaders is because I'm practically not very good at almost anything. And so it's by default that I desperately need that. And so I don't know if that for real is like one of like the practical reasons why it's like worked out this way. But I will just say that what you're saying is true. That by default, the way my brain works is I have to find a way very, 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 very quickly to think outside of Donnie Varney, because I just, it's a core belief that the moment I find myself, it's not a laziness thing. It's not a personal fulfillment thing, because if I'm being honest, a lot of the decisions I've made in ministry have been painful because I really deeply loved and wanted to stay in that that project or that program or that role. But I knew that the moment I fully sunk my teeth into that was the moment that the bigger picture was not going to go forward. And I'm not necessarily saying that every leader needs to think the way that I think or go about the things that I'm doing. I just think, kind of like in general, if you're listening to this podcast and God's given you a leadership role where there are other people, other departments, other staff, other volunteers that are a part of what you're doing, that I would say that a lot of this thinking that has developed for me over the years, I think will resonate with you to some extent. And I guess I'm biased, but I have just found a tremendous amount of personal success in implementing these things. And it's been very freeing, and it's allowed some of the efforts that I've been a part of to, I think, go further faster as a result. So I'm totally not trying to sell any of that, but it is something that you are right, Eric. I am passionate about it. I wouldn't really necessarily say it's like the secret sauce for how teams have been built or whatever, but it's, for me, it's just it's the grid that I work through. I think there are plenty of other grids that other leaders can come up with. And so even if the takeaway is to come up with your own set of criteria and thoughts and ideas, like, then please do that, because you have to be, I think, this level of intentionality in going about this. It will not just magically happen. Leaders don't just find their place and start taking over things. You've got to, as a leader, figure this out a little bit and have something to work off of.
Yes. So
Yeah.
good. All right. So, Donnie, the other thing that is going to be important for our listeners to understand in this context, right? These are in your essence different tiers. So you've got 10 words that start with R. And some of our listeners are like going crazy right now because we haven't told them what the 10 are. They're like pen in hand ready.
Yeah.
But these are different tiers. So kind of you start with one and you're going to work your way down to number 10. I think you said like 6 through 10 is really like they're ready to replace themselves with somebody else on the team. And so let's give them the 10.
Yeah.
We'll why don't I read these 10 and then you just start walking through and explain them. Good?
Cool. Yep.
All right. So Donnie Varney's The Road to Replacement. 10 steps or stops. You might say stops along the way to
Yep.
finding your next leader. All right, ready? Number 1 is respond. Number 1 is respond. Number 2 is research. Number 3 is recommend. Number 4 is results. Number 5 is represent. Number 6 is recruit. Number 7 is resource. Number 8 is reward. Number 9 is retain. And number 10 is replace. If you're one of those people who listen to podcasts on double speed, you may want to slow that down and write those things down. But there you go. Respond, research, recommend, results, represent, recruit, resource, reward, retain, and replace. That's a tongue twister, Donnie. All right, walk us through it, bro.
All right. One more little piece of framework. I have to do this. It's important. But I think most often when we want to find people to invest in, there's a word that gets thrown around, and it's faithful. And I just want to say that I completely agree with that. And I think that all this is expanding that to its fullest extent. And when you actually look at the biblical principle of faithfulness, you find this pattern which says something along the lines of, if you're faithful in a little, you'll be given more, right? And this is literally all it is. This is a grid. These are 10 R's, where if I'm looking to delegate something to you, I'm looking to see, are you faithful in level 1? I can give you level 2. You're faithful in level 2, I can give you level 3. Except, and it just works all the way through. And so there's just, in my mind, when I think of, we did this, I guess that's the way I work, but we throw around the word excellence all the time. And I'm like, you know what? I feel like there should be presentational excellence, there's transactional excellence, relational excellence, missional excellence. And so this is another example where I'm like, yeah, that's true. We want to find faithful people. But I'm like, let's be honest, there's a lot of ways in which someone could be very faithful in one thing, but just be completely incompetent in something else. And then at least we can now we know where to work on them, where to mentor them, where to train them, where to give them opportunities. Like, that's why I say these are steps or stops along the way. Because at some point, as I'm working with a potential leader, I might be like, ooh, we got to stop on number 1. Okay, well, that's where we're at. Or we quickly go through. I'm like, okay, we need to stop at number 7. That's where you're at. Now we can work it through to keep you going down the road to replacement. So hopefully does that make sense? That sets it up a little bit better.
So good.
Okay, cool.
So good.
All right, I'll give Eric, I need you to keep me honest, but I'll try to give just a 30-second descriptor of all of these, if nothing more. Right. Respond is simply, we're looking to is somebody, as I'm interacting with them and I want to set up a meeting, I'm sending an email, it's a text message. This could be for a few days, few weeks, few months. I just want to make sure that this person is, in fact, making themselves available. They're present. They're responding. That's, again, it's a level 1. But if we can't get there, then I'm not really interacting with someone who is working with me. I actually don't have the influence I hope that I had, or they're not yet at a point where they're engaged with me. So I've got to find someone who is showing a faithfulness and a competency that they're responding. All right. Number 2, though, is, I just call it research. I call it Google grit. I want to know, if we're about to tackle a project, or we're looking at something here, or I need to do this, or I'm looking for that. There's all kinds of information out there. I do this a lot of times with some of our interns or some of our college students or folks where I'm like, can you prove to me that you can do quality research, give me a lot of different things and send it to me? And if you can, I'm even the very things that you decide to research communicate something about your ability to understand what it is that I'm asking you to do. So I think that's important. Number 3 is, it's one step further. Based off, some people can send me information, but then it's really great. Just ask them a question. What would you recommend I do? Based off of the research you've done, it looks like there's 5 options that we have. Which one would you choose? Well, I've already in my mind, we're kind of being very hypothetical here, but 3 of the 5 are really bad options, and we're only looking at 2. And if they can give me one of those 2, I'm like, great research, awesome recommendation, let's move to level 4. If they're recommending I'm like, all right, that's not a step along the way, that's a stop along the way. We need to help develop and think through that we're still missionally, even on the same page with where we're trying to go. All right. 4 is,
let me stop you for a second, Donny. If you're a pastor and you have any level of interns, what those first 3 are gold. They're gold. Because right now with technology, with AI, with, you mentioned it, Google, anybody with the internet access can research something. And so if they haven't even read their research and they think that you're giving them busy work and you ask them that question, what do you recommend? So good.
Yeah.
Because if they're like, I don't know, I just did what you asked me to do and I did the research on this, whatever it was, the
Yeah.
project that you gave. That's such a brilliant step for them to take. I love
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
It says a lot. It says a lot.
Yeah, it does. It really does. All
Yeah.
right, keep going. Number 4.
Number 4 is results. When I think of results, I'm specifically thinking of individual tasks where you're like, okay, great. You've responded to me. Awesome. You can do some great research. You even make some great recommendations. All right. Now I actually need you to do something. And you can make it, you have to figure out in your context what you're doing or ask them to do. But you just want to be able to find out, is this someone who can get things done? And you can take number 4 and you can go down that path for a long time or a short time. Whatever your context is, whatever it is that you're looking to do, just make sure that this is someone who's not just faithful in responding, researching, and making great recommendations, but they will actually do things. And it's good work, quality work. We could talk through all of those definitions, but you figure out your context, but just make sure that there's someone who can get results for you. All right. But specifically, I'm just talking about individual tasks that they can accomplish, they can check off, and they can do it the way that you asked them to. I think it's important.
Love it.
Number 5 is where we slowly transition to other people are involved a little bit. So now you want to make sure that this is somebody who represents your organization well, represents your church well, represents your ministry well, is someone who can show up and as you, and this is like another principle I would say is you can't elevate what you don't evaluate. All right. So some people say you can't expect what you don't inspect. I would just say if you want to improve somebody or improve a situation, elevate is what I'm saying, you have to evaluate it. So you as the leader, as they're going through this road to replacement, you need to be able to like have some sort of a gauge and a feedback loop to see how they're doing. So you need to observe them and see how they're doing in representing your organization, your ministry, et cetera, et cetera. And some of that is just a feel. Some of it is obvious. Some of it you can get feedback as they're interacting with other people, but they just need to be able to have a representation about them that checks the boxes for you. Number 6 is recruit. This, if I were to try to draw a line in these 10 things as far as leadership goes, I would say there are quite a few people that you find are faithful in 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I think 6 through 10 is a whole other level. You almost go from volunteer in your ministry to a leader in your ministry. Now, I'm not saying that someone who stops at level 4, level 5 can't get to 6 through 10, but don't be surprised if it might take a while to get someone going through the 6 through 10 on these levels. But this idea of recruiting is, does this person, are they a gatherer? Are they an includer? Do they instinctually, or even if it's a grind, do they have the ability to think of the project or the program or the ministry effort or the thing that you're trying to entrust them with and delegate? Can they bring other people along with them? Okay, I'm not even talking about anything else at this point. We're going to get to this in some of the other levels, but at a basic level, can they find a way? And there's a ton of ways. People will be recruited into what you're doing because of who you are, because you get things done, because you have a charismatic personality, because you've got a strong vision, because you're likable, because maybe they owe you something, because you saw something good in them, et cetera, et cetera. And I think this is a good question for you as a leader to ask a potential leader is, hey, why do people follow you? You're making an assumption that people are following you, but it's very insightful for you to give them a chance. Like, do they know what it is about them that is causing other people to follow them? If they don't, then that could be a sign, but it might also just be that they just haven't really thought about it. Or it's something that they need to figure out, like, what are my skills and my gifts and my personalities? Like, what do I have going for me? I'm kind of this eternal optimist. I kind of believe that there's a lot of options out there and not every leader looks the same. It's sometimes just identifying what is it that I do have that when I leverage that, people start to come to my side and they come to help me and they come to be a part of it. Not everyone has to be what you might think of in your mind as like a top tier leader. There's a lot of things that people have going for themselves that if they leverage it the right way, they can have people follow. So anyway, just getting that job done of recruiting. Number 7, you're supposed to keep me honest with 30 seconds. There's no way that was 30 seconds, Eric.
You gave us you recapped the first 6.
That's right.
That's what you did.
Again, all right, fair enough. Resource should be trained, but that would mess up everything because it wouldn't be an R word. So if you want to, just think of resource as train. But yes, can you recruit people? Good. Level 7, can you train them? Can you equip them? Can you give them the resources? There's the word. So that they can be successful. It's one thing to be able to get people to be a part of what you're doing, but they probably need to know what they're doing, and they probably need to be good at what they're doing. And they might need curriculum, or they might need a workbook, or they might just need a 1-pager, or they might need a video that you could shoot, or they might need a little bit of a job description, or they might need some expectations. What can you do as a leader now that you've recruited them? How are you resourcing them or training them or equipping them? If you can find and see that they're doing that, good. Level 7, you're in. Number 8 is reward. This is, I think, absolutely critical. Now, I'm not saying like, hey, you did a good job doing that, so here's your like piece of candy, or here's your whatever.
You're gonna get
that can be part
now.
of it.
Now we'll start paying you.
Yeah. I just think that it's important that the more you get into leadership, you start to feel a personal ownership to take care of the people who are now doing a lot of the ministry effort that's like under your leadership. And I think part of that is rewarding them. What gets rewarded gets repeated. And you certainly want to praise and reward, and maybe it's compensate, but I think in a lot of cases, it's simply just acknowledging and thanking and taking care of those people. It seems subtle, but like if the person that you've delegated the recruitment to and they're training people, if they keep looking to you as the kind of the top leader to be the one to do the thanking or the whatnot, then it's showing that they haven't yet fully taken on that leadership mantle. But if they feel like these are my leaders, these are my volunteers, this is my team, and I need to thank them, that's a huge win. And it shows that they've moved on to level 8 leadership, that they're rewarding those people. And the moment that someone comes to me and says, Donny, what is my budget for how I can thank my people? Or Donny, what options do I have to make sure that we can take care of them? Or Donny, what incentive can I give to these people who are a part of this so that they can feel loved or whatever? I'm just like, I love that. And I will do whatever I can to give them the opportunity to thank the people that are in their ministry. That's a level 8 leader in my grade. Level 9 is usually, if you've kind of done all those things, level 9 and level 10 kind of happen automatically, but it's a result of that, which is level 9 is retain. Usually, if you've done a good job of recruiting the right people, you've trained them and you've rewarded them, you're going to keep them. And so it's just a very easy telltale sign is if you've delegated a responsibility to a leader and they get, I'm just making up a number, 100 people to be a part of this thing. And let's say it's an annual thing. And so next year comes around and 10 of those people are back and they have to find 90 other people because 90 other people that probably could have been a part of it, probably should have been a part of it, but didn't want to be a part of it. Well, I'm asking a lot of questions like, why is it that they were a part of something one year and they did not want to come back? But the opposite is true. If it's like, man, they did this thing and it went well, and now the next year or the next week or the next month or next time it happens, a lot of them are still wanting to be a part of it and you've retained that. That's a level 9 leader. And immediately that's telling me a lot of things about them. And I think that's really it's really close to the pinnacle of like what you're looking for. And of course, I fully understand there's all kinds of really great reasons why somebody may or may not be a part of this ministry long-term or this or that. So I'm really talking, I hope people can understand conceptually like what you're looking for here. But that retention is a big thing. And that's an indicator in business and organizations, just kind of across the board. So that's not even like a unique thing to us. But if all those things happen, those 9 levels, then I think what's next is replacement. If you've done all of those things and now it's happened consecutively and you're seeing a pattern of retention, then now that leader should essentially look at who has been around and pass that on to somebody else. And if that leader can identify another leader that has been a part of that ministry to now do what they've done, that's in my mind, like that's the ultimate test. And now they've replaced themselves. And now I look at that leader and I'm like, thank you. You've taken care of this ministry. You've taken care of these people. You've resourced them. You rewarded them. They want to keep coming back. You've identified other leadership and now they've taken it on. And now we can find, something even more for you to do. You've been, as I would say, or as the Bible would say, you've been faithful in a little, and we've got to find a way to give you more leadership and responsibility as you've been on this road to replacement. So positive, I failed on that 30 seconds each time. Eric, I tried the best I could though, man. I tried.
So good. Donny, I have a question for you. Okay. So this is tremendously helpful. And I think the number one question in my mind is if a pastor is listening to this and they have a staff member that is stuck on one of those stops, what do they do?
Yes, I would say there is a lot of options. I think it just depends on, are you asking if they personally are stuck or if they see someone that they've been trying to delegate some of this responsibility out to and that person's stuck? Is that what you're saying?
Hang on. Since the dog was barking, I'll have Delaney edit that part out because I wasn't clear.
Okay, sorry.
You're good. All right. So my one question here, Donny, this is super helpful. I would say if a pastor is listening to this, or if somebody is listening to this and they have a direct report, somebody, an intern, a volunteer, somebody that they're thinking this framework through. They're like, I've had a staff member, I've had a volunteer, I've had somebody that I hired to do this process. The win would be if they do this process, right? What do you do if you realize that, like, let's just use a senior pastor for example, if they've got a staff member that they hired with the hopes that they would build a children's ministry team, and it's been 3 years and that person is stuck on number 4, right? And they haven't delivered the result. How do you evaluate that? What advice would you give to somebody in that scenario? So answer that, and then I have one more question for you.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a short way to answer that and a long way. I think that I don't want to even pretend what everyone's timeline should be and how much patience they should have. Everyone's going to have to contextualize this differently. But I would just say that part of this thinking for me is to bring up kind of where they're at, and I do feel like it's likely that there's going to be a stop along the way. So when you are at that level 4 and you realize that's kind of where they're at, I see that as the most practical way that you can mentor, disciple, train, teach, help, encourage. Now, what you're saying though is if they're stuck on level 4 for like 3 years, I would say that would be a long time to be stuck on a level. And it doesn't, I don't think it necessarily is that you don't have a place for them anymore. I don't even necessarily think it's a right or a wrong or a good or a bad. It might, and this is going to probably be the harshest that this whole thing sounds, it might just mean that in this grid, if you really truly have done everything that you would know to do as a leader to get them to from level 4 to level 5, and it just isn't happening, that you might be dealing with a level 4 leader. And that level 4 leader is probably going to end up serving under a level 10 leader, and and someone else is going to end up ultimately taking that ministry where it needs to go. And that level 4 person is going to be a wonderful volunteer under that level 10 leader that's really truly building that team. But that wouldn't be like my first knee-jerk response. I would expect, if I have an intern or someone, that I'm going to do everything I know to do, to help them get past that and get through that for sure. But that's where it starts.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I think to that end, if you are hiring somebody, especially if you're dealing with volunteers, if you're the pastor, if you're the supervisor, the direct report, if you have that expectation that they're going to get to level 10 and they're going to retain and replace themselves, you need to be crystal clear and you need to tell them that up front.
Yeah.
Because in this scenario, the phrase, unclear is unkind,
Yeah.
couldn't be more spot on, right? So if you're hiring somebody, a staff member, if you have this process, this framework, if you're understanding this grid, and you're putting somebody in a position but you're not communicating the end goal, then you've set them up to fail. Okay, so that is a big deal. Donnie, talk about, like, as you've brought people on to your team, how do you articulate this process, these 10 things, to people ahead of time, or is this just an internal grid or framework that you use?
I actually want to take what you said a step further too, because another part of this, which I think is healthy, is if you're the ministry leader and you've got someone stuck on a level, I think you want to take you should be feeling that too. Like, man, what am I not doing to help them out? I think sometimes if someone's stuck for a long period of time, but they really truly are showing all the signs of faithfulness and everything you can imagine, like, be sure to not quickly assume that it's on them, but be sure to have gone through everything you could think through of what have you exhausted everything in your leadership to help them to get to that next level. So I think that's actually a very, not only is it the unclear, unkind conversation, but it's also the have you done a self-reflection on your leadership before you're casting all the weight on they just can't advance in this thing.
Maybe you got stuck on level 6. You recruited them, but you didn't resource them. You didn't. Yeah. That's so good.
This cycle is literally, you're like, if I don't, it can like kind of like weird you out a little bit, but as a leader, you're constantly like living in this cycle. So like as you're looking for someone, to do this, you're like also in that same process. Like you just said it, you've recruited someone, but now are you not able to resource them? And are you figuring out, can they do? So like, it's literally, you're living it out yourself as a leader. So yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. Go back to to that process. Like, do you explain this to people ahead of time as you're onboarding a new volunteer, as you're starting an internship program at your church? Are these 10 things that you're laying out for them, or is this just kind of that framework that you use internally?
No, I don't always say this in all of the detail up front. I mean, but I would say this, maybe we said this already earlier, but this idea of there's always a place for those who replace themselves. So that culture, if you want to call it that general expectation, or even that, like, that's the kind of leader that we're looking for. That's the kind of leader that we want to invest in. That's the person that we want to incentivize to be a part of what we're doing. We actually aren't looking for you, intern, to just simply find your fulfillment and your calling and your value to the team in doing these things. We actually want you to be building into other people so that they can be doing those things a year or two or three from now. So every context is going to look different. But I don't necessarily think that every single task is like that. I don't think that every single thing needs to have teams that build teams that build teams. So that's where I would openly say that there are jobs and positions and staff roles or volunteer roles that it doesn't require you to be recruiting and resources and rewarding and retaining and replacing. So you as a leader just have to define if this is a leadership conversation, not necessarily every single staff role in my organization needs to be going about that. But to your point, Eric, if it is something where it's like, I've actually hired you or you're an intern because part of this expectation is that we need to get people in your ministry or people in your department and you're going to be taking care of those people, then it absolutely should be. And yes, that should be said on day one, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Donnie, one last thing here. I think if I say this probably on every episode and people tease me, but I'm like, if we're honest, and I hope that we are, what is the reality when it comes to pastors replacing themselves? Because in church world, I've been around the block a time or two. I know pastors are sometimes afraid that, and we've done episodes on this, but if you're a senior pastor and you hire a really sharp youth pastor person on your team, again, be real with yourself. If you're afraid that they're better at something than you are, and you're timid or worried or fearful about them replacing you or taking your job or what, because they're a better communicator, or they're a better administrator, or they're better whatever, that's real. Okay. First of all, like, let's just own that's everybody struggles with that. That's real. But you don't want to hinder their growth. You don't want to limit them or stunt them from what God has for them. So what do you do with that side of it? Speak into that for us.
I would answer that question with the alternative reality, which is another quote, which is not original with me, but it goes something like this: if leaders don't lead, they leave. So that is going to end up happening kind of almost either way. So if you're like the senior leader and you've got an upcoming star pastor, gifted and all these things, and you're like, all right, let's get real. And I appreciate you're spot on. Like this is a real thing that goes through the head of most leaders. Okay,
Yeah.
it goes through my head. I wasn't joking when I said like I'm practically not good at a lot of things. Like there's a lot of truth to that. So I feel that way a lot. But I also believe in this idea of like if I don't give leaders the opportunity to lead, they leave. And so you're like, do I want to stifle this young leader and put and kind of control them and micromanage them or kind of put them down or kind of underutilize them or push them aside or slow things down so that I can keep my position? Well, you can do that, but you might as well have just intentionally said, I'm doing everything I know to do to make this person kind of decide on their own to go somewhere else.
Mm,
That's what you're doing.
yep.
And I know that I guess I'm purposely kind of saying it harshly so that we can like understand what that is, what we're doing there. And if you're like, okay, I don't really want to do that. I do believe in them. I want to see them succeed. I think it's another way to look at it. Instead of being threatened that someone is going to take your current role, see it as an opportunity to think bigger of your current role. And when you're faced with that, you're like, what a gift that God's given me. What an opportunity I have to have an even bigger vision for what I'm currently doing than I had to begin with. What an amazing blessing and gift. God must be calling me to something even bigger than even I had imagined. I initially was threatened and I was discouraged and I was afraid I was going to lose something. But I think what's actually happening is God's calling me to something bigger because now I'm having an opportunity to shape this next generation of leadership into something bigger so that I can do something else. I think even that mindset shift might be helpful for someone who's in that situation.
Couldn't agree more. Don, that's very well said. I think I've heard, I know of churches that have had, they'll put a young pastor on retainer that like, if we help you get your degree, you have to sign something that says you're going to stay here for the next X amount of years, that you won't leave. And I'm not knocking that. Like there's time and place, I'm sure, for those kinds of things. But I love your perspective of like making sure that you're having a bigger kingdom mindset, that you're thinking multiplication, not addition, as we like to say. The other piece of that is you're making an investment in God's kingdom. When we're pastors, we work for the Lord, we work for His church. It's not, it's the capital C church, right? It's
Yeah.
and so when you're putting somebody through school or you're helping train and equip them, God may call them to go do something else. And that time that they spent with you, you want to help move them along this process and move the needle and help them leave better than they came and got there, and all those things. So check your hearts on those things. Please don't give the enemy a foothold in this regards in any way, shape, or form. But we do want to just address that and say those things are real, and every single one of us are human beings, and we're ministry leaders, and we have an enemy that's real and wants to try and distract us and divide us. So yeah, be
Yeah.
aware of all that. Donnie, any final thoughts?
Um, you know what, Eric? I feel like I've said a lot on this one.
So
I feel
good.
good. Yeah.
Donnie, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you to our listeners. We thank you for tuning into this episode and just having arthritis as you wrote all that down. So I hope that you've taken a lot of notes. I know I did. I wrote some things down even myself. This is an amazing tool and a resource. And Donnie, we're grateful for you sharing that with us and helping it be something that will make our leaders successful in reproducing themselves into others so that we can have maximum impact for God's kingdom. Donnie, thanks. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. We hope you found it to be valuable. And if you did, would you share it with someone else in your network who might enjoy it? Also, would you please go on and subscribe, rate, and review it? That way you don't miss any more and somebody else will be able to find it too. Also, because we want to be your trusted resource, if you have a question or topic that you would like us to discuss on an upcoming episode, send that to us via email to info@buildmomentum.org, or you can send us a DM on any of our social media platforms. You can find us there at Momentum Ministry Partners. Also, if you need more information on our ministry, be sure to check out our website at buildmomentum.org. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you next time.